Well, let's get back to the latest security and diplomatic developments. Joining us for more on that are David Makovsky from the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and host of the Decision Points podcast. And here in Israel is Brigadier General Relik Shafir, former Air Force Base commander and one of Israel's real top guns. Relik, I want to start with you about the situation in Lebanon. Another Israeli fatality, I believe the fourth one in the security zone since the, I'll say, alleged ceasefire began. How much more can Israel sort of tolerate this status quo that's existing there? And what must it do? What can it do against these provocations by Hezbollah, especially these attacks by these sort of low-cost, low-tech drones that Hezbollah is using?
Beginning of your question, the answer would be at least 18 years, which is what happened in the previous events. We can withstand this for a long time. The question is it clever? Is it something we should do? We've paid so far with 4 casualties, and this is expected to continue. This is called a low-intensity conflict. We're not at will to apply full power to fight Hezbollah. Even if we were, it is really not possible to obliterate the Hezbollah and take them out of the equation without some strategic cooperation with Syria on the one hand and with the Lebanese on the other. We must take into account that about 40% of the Lebanese population is Shia, and even a higher percentage within the Lebanese military. So there must be some situation where the war with Iran wraps up with Iran conceding to the fact that Hezbollah either lays down its arms, which is very low probability, or stands by the agreement to stop firing, even when Israel is still in the southern part of Lebanon. So that's a long answer to a simple question.
Right, but let me just follow up on that one point. Prime Minister Netanyahu did say Israel is working on a solution to these, like I said, these little drones, which are basically just store-bought drones that people use to photograph from the air, and then they're modifying them with explosives. Is this something that is likely to happen soon?
Not soon, but maybe in the long term. The idea that is already being developed elsewhere, except in Israel, actually, I mean, including in Israel, is use loitering drones with, I would say, microwave ability to burn out electronic circuits within the incoming drones. That is the long-range answer. We don't know yet the ranges possible, etc. But this is a technical solution that is not available, operationally available at this time. Otherwise, very difficult to encounter this. Either in Russia and Ukraine haven't found a complete solution for this. And unfortunately, it's, I would say, a new threat that has been around for quite a few years, and there's no real answer for this yet.
All right. David, this ceasefire situation Israel's in as a result of President Trump basically pressuring Israel to declare it in order to give the diplomatic negotiations some breathing space. You just heard Relik says that for this situation to be resolved, Israel's going to need the Lebanese government, the Lebanese military to be a part of this solution in disarming Hezbollah. What are the realistic prospects of that?
Well, you reach, on a very important point, Kalev. I mean, this, on one hand, I think most Israelis would agree this has been the best Lebanese government in decades, in the sense that both Lebanon and Israel agree that Hezbollah works against them, that if they want to take their country back after decades of Hezbollah being a state within a state, because in the Middle East, the people who fire the shots call the shots. If they want to take their country back, they have to act. The question is the issue one of capacity or one of will? If it's a capacity issue, the United States and others could be of assistance. If it's a question of will, all the capacity, more money, resources isn't going to make a difference. And so, what is something they could do? I had on my podcast Decision Points a Lebanese parliamentarian. I interviewed him from Beirut, and he just said, look, if the chief of staff, Haidar, doesn't want to, Rudolf Haikal, doesn't want to act against Hezbollah, then he should be fired. He said this on the record. But the key is things that they could do, I think, in stages. Maybe start the deployment in Beirut, that it's going to have to extend to the Dakhia. So if the issue is one of will, that they have the will, and the question is one of capacity, I think people will want to help them. But people need to know that it's genuine. And, the fact that when there were rockets fired since the start of this war, after February 28th, onto Israel from the south of the Litani, that tells people that there's a problem here, because they claimed that they cleaned it out, and they didn't. And so I think after that, people are going to be skeptical and will say, show me, prove to me that this Lebanese armed forces can extend its sovereignty. No country would allow a non-state actor like Hezbollah, certainly, to fire and do nothing. So I think what Israel's doing could be understood. The question is, can you move Lebanon along, even if they can't do everything at once? We have to solve this, and they have to show that the problem for them is only a capacity issue and not a will issue. I think confidence-building measures of moving incrementally would at least point in that direction.
Well, speaking of confidence-building measures, do you think this 3-week ceasefire President Trump is going to insist it be extended? And talking of confidence-building measures, do you think this much-touted meeting between Lebanese President Joseph Aoun and Prime Minister Netanyahu would actually take place, say, in the White House? I should note there is a Prime Minister's office just releasing a statement now saying that the Prime Minister is not going to Washington next week, which some thought perhaps he would have to meet with President Aoun.
There's a phrase in the Talmud, Kalev, called Kal V'chomer. Like, if you can't do the easy part, you can't do the hard part. If they couldn't arrange a phone call between these two, I think it's impossible that there will be a meeting in Washington between Aoun and Netanyahu. I thought it was very interesting in the setup clip that you showed for the show. You have Netanyahu saying, we can hit in all these different places. He didn't mention Beirut. So there's clearly some flexibility between Trump and Netanyahu on where Israel can respond as needed. This has not exactly been an ironclad ceasefire on Israel whatsoever, even though I know it's not popular in parts of Israel, certainly in the north. But Israel has had a lot of flexibility with this president. I think that's not, something you could question. And but a meeting, I don't see it. I see the meeting as a culmination of after these talks show some success. I do think, talking to Lebanese sources, the government would fall if Trump pushed to the end. But I think it's less important that there's a meeting than we see substantively. Does the Lebanese armed forces act in a serious way against Hezbollah? If they can't do it all at once, but it at least shows some successes in areas where they do apply themselves.
All right. Relik, you could, of course, respond if you want to some of David's points, but I do want to ask you linked the Lebanese conflict, or the Hezbollah conflict, I should say, with the Iran war, saying that the U.S. now perhaps will have to they will take a resolution or some kind of agreement with that, and Iran cutting off Hezbollah. But do you think the combat part of the war with Iran is concluded? It does look like Trump is stressing the blockade and economic pressure route on Iran, and certainly there are many in Israel in the security establishment who believe the kinetic or military aspect of the war is far from over. But do you think that is the direction where it's going now?
I think Trump is relying on the economic pressure applied on Iran for the IRGC to withdraw its hard stance. Lebanon is one of the playing cards that the Iranians are using and will play with to pressure Israel and to pressure the United States from going full scale in Iran. I think at most some of the U.S. forces will hit some of these smaller boats that are laying mines, and maybe a power plant just to give the IRGC the sense of urgency that they may need to come to the table. But going back to our own neighborhood, there's one player, namely Syria, who could come into play against Hezbollah. Now, the Syrians have some old claims on Lebanon, especially in the Bekaa Valley, and they are holding a grudge. The current regime is holding a grudge against the Hezbollah that took part in the long war that ended with about 500,000 casualties, Sunni casualties, that were killed by the Hezbollah as well as Assad's forces. And I think Israel can trade some of our Golan outposts in lieu of the Syrians taking an offensive stand against Hezbollah in the Bekaa Valley. The Syrians can do things that Israel cannot do for different reasons, and putting them into play and showing some strategic maneuvering capability by Israel is probably the better way to go, rather than put pressure on the Lebanese government, which is really unable to use its military forces that are made up of so many Shia members that are really incapacitated. They are really incapacitated in this sense against Hezbollah.
Well, certainly Syria would have perhaps the military capability, David. I wonder if you think that politically, President al-Shah or al-Julani, as some still call him, would be willing to make that move and also address the question, and Relik said, and there are many who believe this, that President Trump is now looking at economic pressure to break Iran, but that's a long-term strategy, which may involve, for example, higher prices at the gasoline pumps. Does he have the political capital to follow that kind of approach?
All right, let me take both questions. Look, on the Shara issue, I agree with the general about, this is not the Assad government. They see Iran as the enemy, Hezbollah as the shock troops of the Assad regime, no love there, and they've been doing what they can, it seems, to block what we used to call the land bridge of rockets coming in that Shiite crescent into Lebanon. So that's a net positive. But their country has been in ruins, and I don't see them militarily engaging in this conflict. So that would be on that point. On your point, on the broad point, I completely agree with the general. This war seems to be entering a new phase of an economic blockade as a standoff where there's brinkmanship, and it's all about a pain threshold tolerance issue. And that's why I'm not sure, Kalev, how long-term it will be, because basically each side is making a bet. The Iranian bet is the price at the gas pump, the impact on the world economy, jet fuel in Asia and in Europe is going to be such that the U.S. can't keep this, let alone the midterms and the politics of higher gas prices at the pump for Americans. So their bet is that in this game of brinkmanship, Trump will blink first. And they purported this proposal, which is let's both sides back off the straits, and we'll talk about the nukes later, which in the Middle East, when you say we'll talk about it later, means never. Inshallah here means never, not, God willing, soon. So that's their calculus. The calculus of the U.S. is these people do not have places to store their oil, and their wells cannot sustain this. They have to shut down. They're getting over $400 million of revenue a day that they're foregoing. But it's not just that, and it's true. You could say this is a, quote, resistance economy, and people are willing to slaughter their own people, are willing to impose economic hardship. It's true, but the U.S. bet is that their oil industry is on the verge of collapse because of they can't get anything through the straits. So how long can this brinkmanship go on about who blinks first? The U.S. bet, which could be wrong, and the Iranian bet, which I hope is wrong, is that this can't go on for much longer. But it's clearly gone into a more of an economic phase of the war. It doesn't mean that, you know, there will definitely be no fighting, because it's the Middle East. You don't know. Even if there's diplomacy, it could break down and then they could return to fighting. But right now, it's turned into an economic calculus of each side about pain threshold. And that is what's undergirding the impasse at the Straits right now.
Let me ask you, Relik, if fighting does return, and we can't rule it out, is there more that can be done? Is there more that can be? Clearly, boots on the ground is something President Trump wants to do. You're a veteran of many air campaigns. Is there more that can be done from the air campaign, which would have either a decisive action towards Iran, or at least, again, push it more to the brink of having to make these kind of concessions, especially on the nuclear issue, which is Israel's major concern?
At this time, the nuclear issue is more or less in Iran's hands, because a ground operation in that area is very unlikely. And perhaps the boots on the ground would be around Bandar Abbas, which is the area where the choking point of the Hormuz Straits. That might be in the making as a show-off to strangle Iran a little bit more. But I would venture to say that some darkness in either Isfahan or in Tehran, or both, by taking out the power plants that make energy in that area, something, not complete obliteration, but taking out the big transformers or some important parts that can be remedied later on, could add to the woes of the Iranians that, according to unofficial reports, are really running out of energy. The unemployment is massive. Some people talk about soon getting to 12 million. We're talking about a country of 90 million people, which is the major working force, and their production is halted through the fact that they don't have raw materials. Most of their factories are taken out. So the Iranians, especially the IRGC, really can't hold for very, very much longer. And perhaps I would say that even in the struggle between the politicians and the IRGC, maybe the politicians would even wish that some coercion would take place against the IRGC, so that would bring them to the table, at least about the nuclear capability. So I think even if the war restarts, it won't be in the same manner as it happened today before. And I would even add that I'm pretty sure that President Trump would not want Israel to be part of the attacks in the Hormuz Straits, as this would put a lot of pressure on him in the United States, where a lot of people, even the Republicans, are saying that Netanyahu is manipulating Trump, which is much to his unliking. So this is more or less what I see happening in the near future.
We're about a minute left. David, speaking of Republicans, President Trump may face a challenge in Congress. The deadline for the War Powers Act is approaching 90 days. You think he'll be able to maintain support there, even just within his own party, to avoid, for example, a resolution in Congress?
I do think for now he's going to be able to do that. I think his instinct anyway is clearly not to use force if he could use economic pressure. So I tend to think he's going to try to keep that alive as much as he can, believing that Iran cannot sustain their position due to their oil storage issues. But we'll have to see. Yes, it's not. It could be moving beyond what we call Rand Paul, the one isolationist in the Republican caucus. You can't say never. He'll push it off as long as he can. I don't see the Republicans defying the president.
All right. Well, I would say that President Trump is going to be facing some of his own decision points in the very near future when it comes to the showdown with Iran, and we're going to have to see how far he's going to be able to go on that. David Makovsky, host of the Decision Points podcast, thanks you for joining us, and of course, Reserves Brigadier General Relik Shafir, thank you for being with us on ILTV.